Hi, welcome to Session 2, Skills and Strategies of Motivational Interviewing. I'm Amy Shanahan, and we'll be moving forward exploring now the skills and strategies. In Session 1, we defined MI as a collaborative conversation style for strengthening a person's motivation for and commitment to change. And we reviewed the components of the spirit to set the foundation. And now we'll review those skills and strategies that were referenced in Session 1. So specifically, we're going to identify 4 skills that are used in motivational interviewing, explore some of the benefits of those skills. I'm going to share some strategies for evoking change talk. When we talked about the spirit in Session 1, that PACE acronym, the E of evoking information from people. We're going to compare the types of reflections that we could use, which are one of the 4 skills. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the roadblocks of active listening. Another acronym to remember the skills. We spend a lot of time using these acronyms, so the ORs, which are open-ended questions. Most of us know what those are. Closed-ended questions, limited answers, yes or no answers. Affirmations, reflective listening, which is truly the heart of motivational interviewing, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And summaries. So we're going to explore the first OR, open-ended questions. Again, closed-ended questions usually elicit a yes or no answer, like we use when we're gathering facts in our assessments. They provide us limited answers, the information that we need to obtain. Not necessarily saying they're good or bad. They don't open or elicit more information, which is intended for with MI, with using open-ended questions. This helps us to open a dialogue to evoke from the person. We try to practice more open-ended questions. So instead of asking, are you doing okay? Or how are you feeling? Even though how are you feeling might be an open-ended question, it sometimes limits the answers, good or bad. You can start with a question, what has been good about today? Or what's worked for you in the past? Or tell me, how did it go when you did some of your exercises last week? Other examples to start with is starting a question with what, or tell me about, or tell me how that worked for you, or how that didn't work for you. Think about how you might answer the question, did you do the exercises this week? Versus, tell me about how the exercises went this week. Some strategies specifically for evoking not only open-ended questions, but asking people some more specific evocative questions. So for example, exploring what's good about the way things are. Some people want to stay the same because it's easier to stay the same than it is to change. And exploring why they want to stay the same can be helpful information. Also asking them what's not good about the way things are. Asking them to elaborate more is an example. Tell me more about that. Especially if you want to ask them how their functioning is. If the exercise weren't working, tell me what happened. Asking them for examples, of course. Looking back and looking forward, exploring what it was like before their injury or surgery. What do they see in a year or 6 weeks or 6 months after they're done with their exercises or their stretching? If you look ahead 1 year, what do you hope to see? Query extremes. What are the worst things that could happen? What are the best things that could happen? And rulers are a way to use a 1 to 10 scale. I think we're familiar with this scale when measuring pain thresholds. using a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to reach your goal of running again? Or how important is it for you to reduce your pain? Helps us to get a sense of their commitment or their motivation to make the changes. Exploring goals and values is helpful to get to know a person, what's important to them, how does this fit in with their current work, family life, or schedule. And coming alongside someone is really just affirming that, hey, this isn't so easy. It's not easy putting yourself first when you have to go to work and get home and take care of the kids. It really affirms, even in a short little reflection or comment to a person, that you're paying attention. I share a little bit of my own experience going to physical therapy, and I was never asked about what my abilities or background or willingness to exercise or what my schedule was like. And because I'm very mindful of skills and tools of motivational interviewing, I thought, if you asked me, you'd know that I'm already doing half of these exercises already, which would have saved us both a lot of time from conversation or teaching me how to do the exercises per se. So those are 10 strategies for helping you evoke some change talk. The A of the ORS skills is affirmations. As you see here, I highlighted some research from our own CMU and others just to talk about the effects of positive things for people. Affirmations, unlike praising people, are specific about the person, specific about their behavior. Praising someone, for example, would sound something like, I'm proud of you, or that's great, great job. I'm glad you got that done. I'm glad you did your workout this week. I'm glad you were able to walk a little farther. These statements might make people feel good, and typically they do. I indicated in session 1, in the spirit of things, it's a little bit more authoritative than it is partnering. They're more about our feelings or our judgment about the situation. And we're going to try to practice in MI taking that equipoise, that neutrality, and really focusing on the person. Some of our praise could be interpreted as condescending. I know my big brother tells me he's proud of me all the time. It feels good, but it gets a little old. In contrast, I wish he would tell me that he really thinks I'm a strong person for persevering. So an affirmation is more specific. You were able to accomplish your goal. Despite your apprehension, you pushed through the pain and got into this routine. So it's really helpful to be specific about what you see the person doing. It helps build their efficacy. It helps them understand that you see that they have made strides and efforts when it might have been difficult for them. Someone simply told me one time, you did this. And it wasn't even anything big or grand. And I was like, yeah, that's great. I felt better that someone recognized that I did something, accomplished something. So we use reflections, which I'm covering next, on giving an affirmation. So you were able to accomplish your goal is actually an example of a reflection with an affirmation. One final note about affirmations in our observation, watching people practice the skills of motivational interviewing, that healthcare practitioners in counseling use this skill not as not as much as we would like to see. And when you see the research says that people perform better, it protects us against stress, and spouses are happier in marriages, it makes sense that we could provide some more affirmations for people. So now we'll get into the reflections. Oh, we're going to practice affirmations. So we're going to practice a little bit of an affirmation here, and I have a scenario. So if you could read that scenario. And now think of or write down some strengths you see that this person has. And here are some examples. He's made some attempts to exercise. Despite maybe some embarrassment, he's here and accepting assistance. So we'll provide a statement that lets him know that we're affirming him. Instead of saying, great job, you made your attempts, or awesome, glad you're here and letting us help you, we'll affirm him specifically. And here are some examples of statements we might make based on those strengths. You're courageous and you've taken some steps to consider changing. You're strong-minded and you know what you need to do. And there probably are several others that you have already thought of. Simply you did it is a good enough affirmation to let a person know that you noticed. Before we get into the reflections, which is all about listening, I wanted to review some things that might get in our way from truly listening. If you take a look, consider some of these on this list that you may have used or experienced. Stephen Covey, an American educator, author, and businessman, wrote about the 7 habits of highly effective people. And in his book, he's quoted as stating, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. It's very interesting to reflect on that and practice it, actually, because it is a habit. So when engaging people, using MI, or as Stephen Covey states, listen to understand, it's good to practice and be aware of your roadblocks. We all have them, and try to reduce the frequency of responding. In MI, they call this a writing reflex. So I recently was helping my mom who wasn't feeling well, and I said, oh, it's okay, Mom, no worries. And it's like cultural, we just say things like that. And she said, you don't know what it's like, because she was in a lot of pain and wasn't feeling good. So she even felt the sense of condescension when I was reassuring and consoling her. That's a common one that I use. Also, giving advice and lecturing are some of my common roadblocks, and I have to stop myself. And what we've helped people do is to think twice, speak once, using some tools from carpentry, which is measure twice, cut once. We've adapted that to think twice, speak once. It helps give us that pause to reflect, are we responding with the intent to respond instead of understand? The first 5 of these roadblocks take away the person's autonomy, which is inconsistent with that spirit we talked about in session 1. The next few point out inadequacies or faults, which is quite negatively judgmental and also inconsistent with the spirit of compassion. Some try to make a person feel better, like I just explained when I said, it's okay, Mom, don't worry about it. This is inconsistent with the spirit of accepting a person where they are. My mom wasn't okay. She wasn't feeling good, and she wasn't really feeling like she believed it was going to get better. The last two either try to solve a problem for the person or divert the subject altogether, which takes away their autonomy. So now we'll get into the reflections and the skills that help us to actively listen. There are two general types of reflections, the simple and the complex. Simple is basically just repeating the element of what the person said or paraphrasing without a twist. Paraphrasing in a complex way is making a guess about an unspoken meaning and adding a little meaning to what they already stated. A reflection makes a guess about what the person means. They're a hypothesis of what we think they might be saying, what's underneath the surface. When we use reflections, we specifically watch people and give them feedback about their voice inflection. It should turn down at the end. It's making a statement. Otherwise, we raise it up at the end and it sounds like a question and it seems less confident. For example, you don't have enough time in the week to do these exercises? If you listen to that, it went high at the end. If I make that a statement, you don't have enough time in the week to do the exercises. What's really interesting when you watch Bill Miller work, I saw a video of him in a training, and he never once asked a question and got a better result. He was listening, and his ways and choices of reflections helped elicit from the person more and more information. So it's good to get into a habit of, so you feel like, or you're wondering if it seems that, and try to stay away from putting I in front of anything you're going to say, because again, that's more judgment about you. So it's a good practice, again, to practice a reflection that starts with the word you. You're not sure you can do this. You're really struggling with your time management, how much time in the day you don't have for exercise. Complex reflections are exactly the hypothesis of what you think a person might be saying. Complex reflections are where we like to spend our time practicing. It helps us get deeper below the surface to express that we're really listening and that we're trying to understand instead of just respond to what the person's saying. When you have the spirit and offer a reflection that's not quite right, sometimes we'll say, you're angry about this. No, I'm not angry. I'm a little frustrated. The person will actually correct you. And they know that you're coming from a good place, and you learn more about the situation. So the various types of complex reflection include simply guessing, paraphrasing what the person said by adding a little twist. A person might tell you, I'm not sure I'll be able to come to 3 sessions a week. What might they be saying? Think about it for a minute. I'm not sure I'll be able to come to 3 sessions a week. Maybe they have a workload schedule that they can't get away from 3 times a week. Maybe they have kids at home that they have to get to. Maybe they're nervous about coming in and they're really scared about creating more pain. Maybe they can't drive. Maybe they don't want to drive because they're taking pain pills. So they're not really always telling you the whole story when they're sharing, I'm not sure I'll be able to come to 3 sessions a week. So you might offer a twist by changing a bit of what they say and reflect. You're not sure you can fit these sessions in with your busy schedule. And perhaps they might add, right, I have to get home to my kids. I have to pick them up from school. If you were reflecting a feeling, a second example of a complex reflection, you might say, you're nervous about doing the exercises when you're in such pain. Using a metaphor, you're juggling a lot and you're wondering how you're going to add this to your list. A double-sided reflection helps capture both sides of ambivalence. Ambivalence is a big part of change. We mentioned that in session 1. Most folks, I'm sure you can think of a change that you have considered or just started. There were both sides of that. I want to do it and I don't want to do it. I like this and I don't like that. So double-sided reflection is a really nice complex reflection to use to elucidate that, bring to the surface the both sides of ambivalence. You're not sure you could commit to 3 sessions and you wish you could find the time. Notice what I did there, and you wish you could find the time. You're not sure you could commit to 3 sessions and you wish you could find the time. I've noticed in our culture, we habitually use the word but. You're not sure you could commit to 3 sessions, but you wish you could find the time. It actually, as we know, negates the first part when we use the word but. An important thing for using double-sided reflections and the concept of ambivalence is both things do exist. So it's and. So you're not sure you could commit, and you wish you could find the time. An amplified reflection can be used to exaggerate or minimize an extreme, like the example here. There's just not enough time in the week to get this done. It aims to have people bring it back in. Sometimes people say, well, I might have time to do 1 day or half hour in the morning. So when you throw out we call it throwing it out of the park. Amplified reflection just throws it so far out to see if they'll bring you back in. Finally, continuing the sentence or the paragraph, something you might notice that you do in routine communication with friends or colleagues, is like adding information that they didn't give you yet. So in this example, and you're considering how much time you might be able to commit to improving your functioning. So you're anticipating what they might say next. And you know this comes easy when you really know a person. So reflections are either simple or complex, and in MI, we try to practice more of the complex to get at the deeper meaning underneath the surface. And it helps people understand that we're listening. Summaries are actually the S of ORS, the last tool of MI. They are longer reflections that capture what the person is sharing. We can use summaries to highlight some key points. You really want to improve your functioning. You're not sure you can find the time in your busy schedule, and you're considering some alternate options to make this happen. Summaries are also used to shift back to a topic. Sometimes when we're working with people, they're really nervous. They're talking about a lot of different things, and they might start to talk about the grandchildren at home that they're feeding and babysitting and don't have time, and it helps you rein it back in. So your grandchildren are really important to you. There's an affirmation thrown in there. Your grandchildren are very important to you, and so is this exercising, and you're trying to find a way to fold that in. I wonder if you've thought of something that you can do to include your grandchildren. And then summaries also help us, as you might already use, to end the session. So this is what we covered today. This is what you're going to do in between until I see you again. And next time we are going to talk about X, Y, and Z. So summaries are longer reflections that help us in 3 different ways when we're engaging a person and talking about change. So to wrap up the skills and strategies, summarizing our second session, you have 2 more to go. You've reviewed the ORs, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Some of their benefits. We identified a list of strategies for evoking change talk. We explored the roadblocks to listening. Some strategies For example, thinking twice and speaking once to give us that pause so that we're not reacting with our roadblocks. And we offered examples of deepening your listening skills by using different types of reflections, specifically complex ones. I look forward to when we meet together in September, we'll be able to explore and practice some of these skills and strategies together. As a final wrap-up, I share with you this quote by Pascal. Your use of reflections really is the key to people hearing their own reasons for changing or not. It's really the mirror. You're mirroring for a person what's coming out of their head and their mouth about their own reasons for changing. In session 3, we'll review the processes that help us move people directionally towards planning for that change. And lastly, as we wrap up, here are some more references that highlight some of those affirmation quotes, research, and a website on the ratio of reflections and questions. And again, the Preparing People for Change, the Miller's third edition. Thank you for joining me in session 2. Look forward to session 3 and 4.